Well, welcome to today's edition of 30-Minute Talks. And thank you again to all of the students and faculty joining us today from around the world as 30-Minute Talks continues to grow in its popularity. Today we've a slightly different show, but nonetheless, one that I hope you enjoy as much as I know I will. Today's show will take the form of a panel discussion. And soon I'll be introducing to you our four panelists for today, who are all esteemed leaders in the education industry, as we all discuss the topic, accreditation. What does it mean and why is it so important? So we look forward to an interesting panel discussion, and we hope that, as we said before, we use the chat functions and use the Q&A functions if you'd like to post a question on any of our topics. But before I do introduce our panelists, I'd like to once again thank our academic partners. And Dr. Andy, why don't you go through our academic partners for today?
Well, we're always very happy to have our academic partners. We have Sunway University, which just joined us last week, and Heli from also the Higher Education Leadership Institute from Australia. LPU has been one of our founding academic partners, along with the University of Santo Tomas and the International Master's Program from National Kaohsiung University, which one of our guest speakers was the former president of there, so you'll be introducing to her later. We always appreciate our support from our academic partners and looking forward to getting some more, as each week we always get a lot of inquiries about becoming a partner.
Thank you, Dr. Andy. And as everybody is fully aware, without academic partners, 30-minute shows would not be able to take place. So once again, thank you very much. And on that note, everybody, a session that we started a short while ago is 90 seconds. And really for today's segment of 90 seconds, here we go. Welcome everybody to another 90 seconds. I'm your host for today, Alan Williams. Have you ever wondered what accreditation means to you as a student? Well, did you know, like tourism accreditation programs, accreditation can also be an incredibly important part of your education. When choosing an education institution, it is important that you have a clear picture of the quality and the standards that the institution subscribes to and upholds, if it is reliable and delivers on what it promises, or if it is recognized by the industry and your future employers. Accreditation can be very confusing. So what is accreditation? Well, simply put, accreditation is a process of quality control and quality assurance whereby, as a result of independent assessment, an educational institution is recognized as meeting the minimum and acceptable standards as prescribed by the accreditation body. So whilst at first it may seem like accreditation has no importance to you as a student, this could not be further from the truth. I know that almost everyone attending 30-minute talks will have seen one or more of these accreditation logos, and that is a good thing. It demonstrates your institution is committed to quality and maintaining high standards. Accreditation should therefore give you a lot of confidence in your choice. Accreditation offers you the peace of mind knowing that you'll graduate with confidence in your qualifications. Remember, accreditation is a dedication to quality and is a journey, not a destination. It is something you will encounter throughout many aspects of your life. Make good choices and look for quality marks of accreditation. And good luck with the remainder of your studies. Thank you for joining another 90 seconds. And thank you very much, everybody, for 90 seconds. And I think that's a great introduction to today's session. And just before I actually go into introducing our speakers for today, one more quick reminder before we get started that we'll be announcing our second winner of the 30-minute talks background challenge today. This is awarded, as you know, to a student who sent us their most creative Zoom background over the past week. So hold on to your seats. We'll be announcing our second winner a little later today. So let's get started, everybody. As I promised earlier, I'd now like to introduce today's esteemed guest speakers and panelists who will be discussing accreditation. What does it mean and why is it so important? Our first panelist, who would be known to some of you joining us today, is Professor Pearl Lin. Professor Pearl was the president of NKUHT, or National Kaohsiung University of Hospitality and Tourism in Taiwan, from April 2016 to March 2020, and she is currently president of APAC CRE, as well as the president of the Chinese Tourism Management Association. She's been involved with the hospitality industry for more than 30 years, and after graduating from National Taiwan University, she studied for a master's degree at the University of Oregon, USA. She then worked for leading hotels in Taiwan for several years before she pursued a PhD from Oxford Brookes University in the UK. Having been educated in Asia, America, and Europe, Professor Lin has a broad view of the style and content of hospitality and tourism education, crossing 3 continents. Professor Lin is passionate about education and strives to inspire all students. And we'll see Professor Lin join us in a few moments. Our second guest is Dr. Lilibeth Aragon. Dr. Lilibeth, who also is no doubt known to many of you, is joining us today, is the Dean of the Lyceum of the Philippines University, Manila's College of International Tourism and Hospitality Management. She has also contributed in the continuous improvement of training regulations and competency-based learning materials and assessment for ASEAN and technical education and skills development. Dr. Aragon is also an accreditor for tourism, hospitality and graduate programs of the Philippine Association of Colleges and Universities Commission on Accreditation. Dr. Aragon holds a Bachelor of Science degree in tourism, Master in Business Administration, and a doctorate degree in business administration from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. Dr. Aragon is also an ASEAN Master Trainer, the first batch to represent the Philippine delegation in last 2012, held in Bali, Indonesia. And of course, two other speakers that probably need no introduction, but I'm going to speak. Dr. Andy Nazarechuk is a co-host of the show. Many of you have seen for the last 13 weeks and would have seen at maybe your institutions. Dr. Andy Nazarechuk is considered as one of the world's foremost authorities on international tourism in the hospitality industry. He has over 25 years experience in the Las Vegas hotel industry. And what many of you may not know is Dr. Andy is also an accreditation auditor for the ICE and is an authority on accreditation. And last but not least, we have Professor Perry Hobson, who is also a co-host of 30 Minutes and is Pro-Vice Chancellor of Engagement at Sunway University, Malaysia. Professor Perry Hobson holds a bachelor's degree from Oxford Brookes, a master's from the University of Massachusetts in the USA, and a PhD from Southern Cross University in Australia. And again, what many of you may not know is that during his illustrious career, he was also a previous CEO and still is a director of the ICE, and is considered a world leader in educational accreditation, institutional educational accreditation. So on that note, I'd now like to hand the session to Professor Hobson, who will begin with setting the stage for today's discussion with an introduction to accreditation. Please welcome Professor Perry Hobson.
Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you might be. It's great to welcome you back to another 30 Minutes webinar, and particularly to welcome our other panelists onto this week's webinar. And I must say, I'm very pleased we've picked this particular topic, a topic which is very close to my own heart for all sorts of reasons. So look, let me get started here on because I believe accreditation is something that's actually really very important. And it's something, again, that often academics tend to talk about more than often we talk about it to students or parents. And so I think this week, hopefully, I hope we can demystify that a little bit and to give you some insights as to exactly how these processes work. So to begin with, you know, education, and people have to remember this, has globalized phenomenally in the last couple of decades. And we've got many students studying in hospitality and tourism, not only in their own countries, but in many other countries as well. So what happens in a lot of countries is that universities get a local registration, sometimes the words is used. Sometimes it's called an accreditation as well, but different countries use different terms. When we then move, particularly into the international, you then start to move into this world of what we call voluntary accreditation. So in other words, if you're an institution in the Philippines, in Malaysia, you have to get registered and licensed to be able to offer your qualifications in that country. Now, those are national, often minimum standards. They're not what we would call aspirational, necessarily aspirational standards. And often because they're locally based, they may not be internationally relevant. So what we now see around the world is an awful lot of competition between different institutions around the world. And that's great because that's about what tourism is about and hospitality is about. We're in an international education field. But along with this comes an awful lot of challenges because we've now got a lot of choice. Now, some of these institutions I've got up here on the screen are real, quite legitimate institutions. But unfortunately, I happen to know some are not. So the question can be for many people, and potentially for students and for parents, how do you decide? How do you know? And what basis have they developed their curriculum? Who is accrediting them? And so these become quite significant challenges because let's face it, it's easy to put together a very good looking website. It's much harder to actually deliver a curriculum which is relevant, which is tied in with industry standards, which is benchmarked internationally. So that's the challenge we're facing. So simply put, what we're seeing is a lot of confusion in the marketplace, because lots of institutions are out there saying, we've got this program, we're the world's best, we're Asia's best, we're XYZ country's best. Of course, parents and students want assurance. So just like when you look for quality marks when you're buying other products and services, you want assurance. And then we also want, the industry also wants to know that they're going to get quality graduates. So how do they know which institutions to go to hire that type of student that we know will meet what we're looking for in the industry? And of course, tied in with all that is the importance of international recognition. Now, accreditation has been around, voluntary accreditation, for a very long time. So if we look at an adjacent field to hospitality and tourism business, we could look at what's called AACSB. Now, that's the American Collegiate College of Business Schools. Now, that's actually been around since 1917. Now, part of the reason for that is that the US government doesn't actually accredit individual institutions. Now, that may be done in other countries, but in the US, it's not. It's done by 6 regional bodies in the US. So back in 1917, when that started, they said, how do we decide which are good business schools and meet the minimum criteria for offering a quality business education? So these different accreditation bodies have now grown up in different parts of the world. So AACSB, historically based in the US, EQUIS, which is a European one, which is based in Brussels, and the Association of MBA Programs, which comes from the UK. So now what you're seeing is not institutions getting 1 accreditation, but they may be getting 2 or 3. And this is an indication of the importance of the different accreditation is playing, but also relate to the fact that different accreditation bodies are looking at different things. So that's something else we have to understand. So we have national accreditation, we have international, and often that's voluntary. Now remember, in some areas like engineering, architecture, doctors, dentists, there will be professional accreditation, which are set standards. In other words, you not only have to pass your degree, but you also have to become a member of a professional body in order to practice. Now, hospitality and tourism is a bit different because we're a very, very broad area. So it's not like we've got a very set body of knowledge because of our breadth of what we do. So the ICE was actually started back in 2003. And it started out life actually as an initiative of the Australian government and then became independent in 2008. And the focus of the ICE has been to do really 4 things. It's been to recognize excellence in hospitality and tourism education. It's been to develop that excellence. It's been to promote that excellence. And it's also been able to benchmark that excellence. So the institutions in different countries can be benchmarked. Because remember, many of those hotel chains are global. They have global standards. So they're also looking at hospitality schools, not only to be locally excellent, but also to meet their global perspectives as well. So what does the ICE include? Well, basically, there are a number of standards of excellence. Now, I'm not going to go through them all today because it's a lot more detail, but you can always go onto the ICE website and have a look at them. But we go through what the aims of the program are, and what our auditors then do is to go and look at the documentation so that we can see and assess whether the institution is meeting the goals and what its aspirations are. So we have, as Alan mentioned in the introduction, a number of world-leading assessors, and here are some of them. And our auditors go in, so not only do we look at the paperwork, but we also visit the institution. We talk to the staff, we talk to the students, we talk to industry to make sure we've got a complete 360 picture of what's done there. Furthermore, what we also do through the ICE, which is unusual for accreditation bodies, is we benchmark. And if you've been a student in one of the ICE accredited schools, you may well have been asked to fill out a survey by iGraduate. Now that survey is something that's taken very seriously. So what we do across the ICE is we take those benchmarks, and as remember, it's all confidential. So as you can see on the next slide, each institution gets a number, and that number relates to the institution. And then we benchmark. So as you can see, some institutions, for example, in this particular slide, institution 21 has got kind of a lot of red there, which would indicate that that institution is behaving below the average, while institution number 18 is doing a whole lot of things much better. So that raises the question, what's happening at institution 18, and how can other members learn from one another? So if you look at learning spaces by institution number 9, very green. So clearly they're doing something right. So that helps other institutions, us to learn from one another, because what we're about doing is raising the standards of excellence. So that's what our focus is through with the ICE. So I hope that's given you a very quick indication and an overview about what it is that the ICE is doing. And we're a family of institutions that are involved in doing this. So hopefully that's given you the indication of what we're doing and some of the things that the ICE has been involved in. Alan, back to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Hobson and Perry. A great overview of accreditation. And it makes for a really, really interesting start to our panel discussion for today. So if I can ask, thank you very much. There we go. Professor Pearl Lynn is joining us, and Professor Dr. Lilibeth is joining us as well. And Dr. Andy, thank you everybody and welcome along as today's panelists. On the basis of Perry's great introduction to accreditation, I guess what I'm looking for is some fruitful conversation in relation to accreditation and really what accreditation means to students and to faculty. So maybe if I can start with yourself, Professor Pearl. Yes. I know as president of NKUHT, you would have been involved in decision-making to undertake accreditation with the institution and with the ICE. Can you let me know a little bit about why the university decided to seek accreditation and how did the audit process help your school?
Okay. I think, first of all, I was very impressed by the 4 pillars of the ICE, the recognition, because right now, we all know the competition is really worldwide. So maybe, each university will claim they will be the best in any individual country, but how about the rest of the world? How do they recognize you? So I think to get international accreditation, first is to get recognition. And then by the assistance of all the experts from all over the world, then you can develop your own excellency. And then by promoting your brand identity, there will be more quality students, quality faculty members get to know you. And I think the last benefit of accreditation is like the benchmarking. We're really looking forward to this because our good practice, we would like to benchmark with other university and see how we actually performed in the real world.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much for
answer your question. First question, why did our university would like to seek accreditation?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Pearl. A very interesting and good perspective, and I guess recognition for students in terms of brand recognition and what that means to students is a really important part. Maybe, Andy, could you just comment on Pearl's response there in terms of being an auditor for the ICE and what role the auditor plays in terms of that process?
Sure. Yeah, actually, it's a very interesting process, and Pearl brought up one point which I'll refer to. But initially, the university has to provide hundreds of pages of how do they do things, and it drives them crazy when they have to put this application together. But what it does, it forces them to review their own policies and procedures. So we look at the application very carefully to see how do you improve your curriculum? How do you do this? How do you do that? Everything is in that document so we can ensure that they actively try to continue to provide quality education. Now, Pearl mentioned one thing. Everybody says they're the best. It's like a restaurant. If you call a restaurant and you say, how's your food? They're gonna say, our food is great. Everybody says their food is great. But when you go to that restaurant and you have that meal, you say, the food here is terrible. So they lied to you when they said it was great. As an auditor, I do one thing when I go in. I evaluate what the university promises to do for the students, and then if they deliver that promise. And if they do that, then they are at least doing what they say they're not going to do. They're not making promises that they can't keep. And it's an important factor when I do an audit. And I always talk to when we talk to students, they always give the best students to talk to, but I talk to every student I can meet in the cafeteria, at the library. So I get people who tell the stories about the university. And most, if not all, of the accredited schools that I've involved with, the students are always very proud to be members of that school. And at the fact that the university is seeking accreditation, they already know they are at a high level of education and are happy to try to go through the process. And it just validates the quality of the school for everyone involved.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Dr. Andy. And it's really, really important, the point that you make, that the accreditation is a whole of institution, including speaking to students and validating the university's perspective from the student's point of view. Dr. Lilibeth, as Dean of LPU, also, I believe, one of the first institutions in the Philippines to be accredited through the ICE. But I guess I'm speaking to you from a whole range of perspectives, because I've seen that you've got regional, national, and international accreditation experience. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what you believe is the single most valuable component of accreditation to students of the institution.
Thank you, Alan. I think it all boils down to quality. Through accreditation, I think it builds the credibility of the institution. And so the students are aware that when they enroll in our institution, for example, they are assured that they're going to get good value of their education with us. Through education, I think, and accreditation, it's a very good leverage to start on quality assurance processes. And in the area of faculty, they're the figurehead inside the classroom. We can always declare that we're the best university. The first line of contact when it comes to students' education would be the teachers, the faculty members. And so somehow, as an institution who's undergone accreditation, we feel duty-bound and responsible in terms of delivering the best and the quality that we've promised to our students, parents, industry, even the society. It's like contract is like a promise. And so the more that we engage in the accreditation process, I think the more that the confidence, the credibility, and of course, protection of the brand and marketability of the programs will be enhanced.
Thank you very much for your comments. And I guess I mentioned at the start of the show that accreditation for most institutions is a journey rather than a destination. So it's an ongoing process. And congratulations on everything that the ICE members, as part of their accreditation, are achieving. Maybe if I can just now refer to yourself, Perry, again, from your perspective, having seen a number of institutions from around the world go through the accreditation processes, what, in your view, is some of the toughest parts of the accreditation process that you would see from an accreditation body?
Okay, well, to start with, as you mentioned, it's been around the world. And as I mentioned in my opening presentation there, although the ICE started on Australia, we now have members going from Fiji through to Australia, through to Malaysia, over to Dubai, through to the Netherlands, through to the UK, through to Switzerland. So we've now got a very significant part of the globe. And obviously, there are a lot of differences with education systems in each of those countries. And so one of the challenges that has come up over those years has been understanding the different education systems in different countries. And there's good reasons why different education systems have approached things differently. So for example, in the Philippines, until quite recently, they basically had 10 years of schooling. And then that was stretched to 12 years. That had a significant change on what it was universities were expected to do, as an example. Some countries have 3-year degrees, others have 4-year degrees. So you've got to, first of all, understand each country's got a different education system. And when we go in as auditors and meeting our colleagues from different institutions, it's understanding, first of all, that background and context to how the education is being developed in that country. Different countries, obviously, hospitality and tourism may be a greater or a lesser extent important to the country's economy as well. In some countries, you see a lot of the students, for example, in the Philippines, going to work overseas. So they're also wanting an education institution that is globally recognized because that travels with them. there are 25,000, at least actually 25,000 universities in the world. Some people would say closer to 35,000. How many could you name? And if we ask the industry, how many could you name? So suddenly, even if you've got a qualification from that institution, there's another way people go, oh, I've never heard of that one. So that becomes another factor. So when we're going into the institutions, it's understanding the context of the country, it's understanding the history of that institution and why they've put the curriculum together the way they have. Now, in a lot of countries, I hate to say it, but it's sometimes a little bit of groupthink in the sense that your system often determines how you produce things. So what we found is that when you open the doors and you've got people from different countries talking, not only are we finding a problem shared as a problem solved, but what we're also discovering is that amongst different institutions, they're also learning from one another. And that becomes very important as well as we develop the curriculum across those different institutions. And as we develop benchmarking and conference and forum activities, which the ICE also does.
Thanks very much, Perry, and some very, very interesting comments. And I think that leads on very nicely to the next question. And I'm going to ask you, Pearl, because you're from an institution that's a little unique. I guess I think it's one of the first times that the ICE has gone into accrediting non-English language or a curriculum in a non-English language setting. So can you talk to me a little bit about getting accredited? Did it help the marketing and the branding of your school? And what was your experiences coming from a non-English speaking community?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think first of all, I have to explain to the students that are joining us worldwide, because now we have over 200 countries worldwide. And as Perry just mentioned, maybe we have 2,500 or more than 3,500 programs. Everybody, maybe if you only live for the rest of your life just in your own country, you can probably quite happy with, like, I know what my university stands, and this country, everybody knows what my university stands. But once you want to travel, and especially in the hospitality and tourism industry, it's a global market. If you are just 20s, you have 40 years career life ahead of you, maybe more than that. At a certain time, you will travel somewhere and work in some other country. And that's why accreditation is important to you, because once you get out of your own country, maybe other country, they don't know you. Like LPU is a very unique and very good university in the Philippines. But actually, to be honest, people in Taiwan, we would know very little about LPU. But by accreditation, we know, oh, you are a member of the ICE. Then we know your status. You must be one of the, very best university in the world to be qualified as this. Then you get recognition by things like this. So accreditation actually is not only good for the student. Actually, it protects the interest of you and even your parents or the academic institution themselves, and even the potential employees, by ensuring that these education programs offered have attained a certain level that meet or even exceed the standard that were developed by the experts in the world. So while accreditation does not ensure that every graduate student will become a very, very successful professionals, but it doesn't guarantee those students that have demonstrated a certain set of skills and ability, they are reflected in the accreditation criteria. And Alan mentioned, yes, in Taiwan, because our domain language is Chinese. So accreditation, yes, is a big challenge, because we have to prepare hundreds of pages of document. But I think the good things is the ICE, they hire a professional translator to come with them. This is very important. So we don't have to translate millions of pages, within our administration system, all into English. They hire a translator, and whenever they direct it to a certain area, say, okay, show me how you help your students to promote their external activities, things like that. Then we can direct them to our own Mandarin, Chinese language. And the translator can help them to identify and to translate whichever bit they want. So I think it's very important because I checked with the list. We are probably one of the few that is not delivered all the courses in English. So our daily administration effort is still basically rely on Chinese. So by hiring a translator by themselves, so they can trust their own translator. You know, the translator is not hired by us, so they can trust, you know, whatever the translator indicated. And I think that helped a lot. So otherwise, actually, if you want the accreditation to be successful, it's not only the president or the owner want accreditation. The faculty members and the student, they have to support you as well. That's very important. If your faculty member do not support you go for the accreditation, you know, you won't get a very successful accreditation, and you won't enjoy, you know, you won't enjoy the journey. You will never get to your destination, and you won't enjoy your journey either. So I think to get the support from your faculty member is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very, very interesting perspective, Pearl. And I think you're absolutely right. It's one of the first times that the ICE has gone down that path. And well done and done on sticking with that journey. We've spoken quite a lot about the focus on branding and the focus on the institutional reputation. Dr. Lilibeth, if we talk a little bit more about accreditation and improving academic programs and improving quality, have you got a perspective on how accreditation might impact the institution and their programs in terms of improving quality?
Yes, Alan, I think the very purpose of accreditation is for program improvement. And a lot of testimonies were given from institutions here in the Philippines who were not accredited before or prior to accreditation, and then what it has done to improve the system, the processes. For one, in terms of the faculty, it became very critical for an institution to balance and to really look for the best teachers who will be able to translate all the learning outcomes inside the classroom. So the students would know that, recognize that if a school is accredited, then they would have the best teachers who doesn't just have the academic qualifications, but who are well exposed in the industry. For one, upgrading of facilities are very good translation of accreditation efforts. Through accreditation, and of course, this is an informed process so that the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities of the schools will be revealed by the auditors. And having said that, upon receiving the comments or the feedback of the auditors, the school who has been committed with accreditation would normally do a lot of improvements in terms of the facilities. In terms of the acquisition of learning resources, the books, the journals, I think those are really some of the more tangible things that accreditation can do. It also enhances collaborations and networking. So if you are an accredited institution, it would always facilitate linkages with the local universities and also the industry and the government, not just within the Philippines, but you go out of your country because you always have this learning to learn from the best. And benchmarking is also one way wherein the practices could be reinforced. In terms of research, this is something wherein most of the institutions are improving a lot because they know that if you would like to be accredited, you have to focus on the trifocal functions of the university. And again, the challenge really is for you to be able to sustain that commitment because after getting that accreditation, it's not just about having that prestige, having that prominence of being part of, for example, the ICE. There's also a very big responsibility for you to sustain it. And for you to be able to keep moving up, you have to really look into your system, keeping in focus that the reason why you chose to be accredited is for the students' development. And so all other components should be in place. I would like to agree on what Perlin mentioned, that it's not going to be successful if there's no synergy. Accreditation is not just the work of a single unit. It takes the synergy of all the departments. You have to create your quality roadmap, and from there you have to set your targets. You have to be abreast with what's happening around you. And through accreditation, I think this is a very good leverage for you to stay through with the quality standards that you have set. Because after all, again, this is a commitment to the students, to the parents, to your industry partners, and to the society as a whole. Because if you're accredited, the more, aside from marketing the program, keeping the brand and all, I think the bottom line here is that you'll produce better graduates who are accepted by the industry, who have the credibility, and of course, the industry will gain the respect of the institution.
Thank you very much for your fantastic comments there. Andy and Perry, have you got any responses to that from you know, an accreditation auditor's perspective?
Actually, Alan, the one things that Lilibeth would know that, and I can't say, I think when I did the very first accreditation and audit visit of LPU, that has to be, what, 8-10 years ago. It's very clear that some universities are excellent in teaching and excellent in service, but some universities were not as good in research. And so we set goals for a university, say, yes, you're a great university, but you have to do better in your research. And if you look at it, LPU is a great example. Over the years, they have now adjusted that balance, so they are now participating in more research projects and publishing more articles, and those are the things that help a university develop a quality reputation. The second part of that is actually that we wanted them to do more international type projects, attend more international conferences, bring in more international speakers, and so those are a couple of the recommendations that we provided back over maybe 10 years ago, and those are the goals that have been added to the LPU's annual strategies, and you can see over the last few years how well they have reached those goals in order to continue to hold their accreditation.
Yeah,
very much, Andy. What about yourself, Perry?
Yeah, I would echo that, and I just see we've got a question in here also about what are the main pain points in accreditation. And so look, I think when institutions put themselves up for accreditation, you are, as an institution, wanting to see yourself as part of, dare I say it, a global grouping. You're willing basically to let other institutions come in to see what you do. And we're very evidence-based in terms of the accreditation. So if an institution is saying, you know, we guarantee all our students a job, we're like, okay, show us how that works. So, you know, lots of institutions make claims, and the question is, are they evidence-based? Secondly, as Dr. Andy has pointed out, it's going into institutions and focusing, shining a light on some things that may not, in their context, have been something they thought about, but globally can be quite important. And I think that's been raising the standards of education across the different members. And we wanted, and I guess to the question that was put there by Tina, which is what were the pain points? You know, when we were developing the standards of excellence, we realized that some of those questions were going to be very challenging because they have to show the evidence. And we found institutions, as we've gone over the years, who said they had industry, for example, industry advisory boards. And when we wanted evidence, they said, oh, yeah, they met about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, you're trying to tell me you're current with the industry. This hasn't happened. So it brings people in from outside who are often critical friends as well, to share with institutions what can better be done. And from a student's perspective, coming back to the benchmarking, this is very important because it's the students who fill out the surveys. And that allows us for institutions to reflect on what they're good at. And what interestingly we found was some institutions didn't know they were good at certain things because they were getting lots of green on those benchmarking charts I showed you. And they said, wow, well, we're pretty good at this. That was just what we do. And other institutions said, oh, that's impressive. We didn't know you could do it that way. So what we've also done is across the ICE membership, raise those standards by sharing, cross-fertilizing ideas. And those have been fantastic sharings. And that, I think, is really reflected in raising the quality of the education that students in ICE member institutions are receiving.
Thanks very much, Perry. And I can just reiterate and support what Professor Hobson's just said there. In my past life, having had an institution and with our board and our management committee, the usefulness of those surveys was absolutely extremely important. I can't stress enough for students to actually participate and make your voices heard, make your points of view seen, so that institutions can actually understand better what you're thinking, how you've seen your experiences with them. It may not always be the same as what the institution has seen, and they might be able to adapt and improve their services, their products, their programs, whatever. So look at those surveys as being a really, really important and integral way in which you give your communication and feedback to the institutions. Can I just, before we wrap up the session, I've got one final question, and I wouldn't mind each of you just thinking about this. It's asking for each of you for one simple thing. What do you recommend institutions seeking accreditation focus on in order to prepare themselves for a successful accreditation application? So 1 point from each of you, I wouldn't mind. What is the single thing that's most important to you for an institution to get accreditation? So let's maybe start with yourself, Pearl. Sorry to put you in that position, but I know you've just recently been through it, so it should be fresh.
Okay, I don't think 1 point is enough. 3 at least. First of all, they have to understand every criteria and details that the accreditation system asks. So go to those details and make sure you understand every one of it. And then I would say communicate with the ICE representative closely and frequently. You know, whatever you don't understand, ask them. You know, they are awfully nice, very nice person, so ask them. And lastly, I would say maybe you can ask other institutions that have passed accreditation previously and ask them their experience, ask them, you know, what things we should particularly look at or be careful and blah, blah, blah. I think those are the 3 things. So, but most important is check with every criteria and every detail the accreditation system asks. They have a very detailed specification, so just follow them. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I wrap that up, I think you would be saying, make sure you understand the needs for of the accreditation program that you're seeking accreditation with before you proceed, and understand that very clearly. Thank you. What about yourself, Lilibeth? What are your thoughts?
Okay, I will raise also 3 points, Alan. First is preparation. You have to be keen on the details. Normally there's a self-survey instrument, and so there's no one preventing you from looking into that intently and then trying to determine if indeed your institution or the program is ready for accreditation. Of course, document, because the auditors will be coming into your institution and they will look for the proof. And you cannot simply say that we have it in place, but there has to be something that is credible and something that they will be basing upon. And so you have to be able to show that as a proof that these things are already in place. And of course, the last thing is, of course, the synergy of the different departments of your institution or the university. There has to be cooperation and teamwork, because it's not going to be your department who's going to be on your own when you put up all these documents and evidences. It's a continuing process. And so the last one would be, of course, your commitment to quality. I think that's the very purpose why we have accreditations, because we have to commit to quality, because there are a lot of stakeholders that depends on us, and it's really part of the culture of an institution.
Thanks very much. And I'm not going to get my red pen out because my question was wrongly phrased or not, but over to Andy and Perry. Can I get 1 point from each of you?
I'll go, Perry, then you finish up, because you're the ice guy. So let me say that Lilibeth stole one of my ideas about documentation, because that's what I look at a lot. But because I always say, you tell me everybody does things every day, and I say prove it. And so the best example is, yes, you have a meeting, great. Do you have an agenda? Who was there? That's the basics. That's the very basics. But what happened at that meeting? And did someone have an idea or a suggestion that everybody agreed to? And then I will say, Show me how you implemented that new idea or whatever action would need to be taken. And it doesn't matter if you actually did it or not. It's just the fact that 3 months later, we said we are going to do this or we aren't going to do this and the reasons why. So the documentation is the key, following up on what you do. And just like Professor Hobson mentioned, the advisory board, yes, we have an advisory board. Do you ever take their advice? Give me one example would be the kind of a question I would ask as an auditor. And so those are the kind of things that, yes, a lot of people do it, but they don't document it, they don't prove it, they don't think about how it affects their accreditation in the process. So documentation is a key item for success in accreditation.
Thank you, Andy. And over to you, Perry, to wrap it up.
Well, look, it's hard for me because obviously developing the standards of excellence that I did, it's like me asking to choose my favorite child. But probably the one thing I would say is for institutions to be able to be very clear about identifying what their vision and mission is. Because the way the ICE accreditation is set up is you've got to put that out first. And that's the same thing you should be saying to the students. This is what we want to be. This is the type of education we're looking to develop. Because all the questions after that relate to how you are meeting that goal. So if you can't identify that, and it's like for any student saying, you know, this is what I want to be when I grow up. If you can't say, we want to be this type of hotel school delivering this type of education, and you're not able to clearly identify that, then accreditation becomes very problematic because you're not able to actually structure everything to answer that clear question. And so I think it's really important that institutions can be able to identify that. And that shows up because the question then becomes, do the staff have buy-in to that? Do the students have buy-in to that? Does the industry have buy-in to that? So vision, mission, and objective, that's my number one.
Fantastic. Listen, on that note, everybody, I think today's discussion has been a very, very valuable discussion about accreditation. And I really want to thank every one of you for your input. Thank you, Professor Pearl Lynn. Thank you, Dr. Lilibeth Aragon. Thank you, Professor Perry Hobson and Dr. Andy Nazarechuk. As I said, a very enlightening discussion. I'm hoping that students and faculty that have joined us today have got a better feeling for accreditation now. And that poll that we ran at the start of the session, everybody can at least tick one of those boxes to say they understand a little bit about accreditation. And that in one way or another, we've also shown that to students that institutions that take the opportunity of becoming accredited with an external accreditation organization or agency, it really is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work on behalf of the institution. It's a lot of hard work on behalf of the faculty, and it's a lot of hard work on behalf of the students to show that what the institutions are doing, the students are actually real live living samples of that product. So I wish everybody well. Thank you again for your fantastic contributions. I'd like to just share my screen and ask all of the participants today to please join me in giving us a virtual thank you, if you don't mind. Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much for your time and for your energies and for your commitment to today's session. And, you know, we look forward to many more conversations with each of you as we go through. But as I promised at the start of the show, we're now looking forward to announcing today's winner of the 30-Minute Talks Background Challenge. And as you know, last week, we showed you a slide and we had a winner, and I'm hoping that our winner from last week is spending their money and enjoying their prize already. But for today's winner and a drum roll, I might ask Dr. Andy to join me on this and just talk about today's winner, Dr. Andy.
Yeah, Alex. This was the most creative Zoom background, which is a little bit done. And so we said, what could we do? And so the question was, this is one of Dr. Perry Hobson's slides. And we had someone out there that said, you know, I think we can be very creative and we could really make that slide better. So we, you know, when we're preparing for the show, we always share we make comments on each other's presentations and so forth. But this is a student's submission to make Perry Hobson's slides better. Here it is. Ta-da! And yes, John, as a PUP student, and so we will be giving the award for there. And we're also announcing that we've increased the winning amount to 2,000 pesos for the final background challenge. And I told Dr. Aragon that she should be applying because her background is very nice. Got better from the first time we've seen her. So when it's interested in winning that 2,000 pesos for the next final winner for the background challenge, we'll do that next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andy, and congratulations to John Reniel Delasay. We'll be in touch with you very shortly with getting in contact and sending you the prize money. And don't forget, everybody, as Dr.
I've
Andy...
actually, hang on, Alan, I've got to send, I've had several hundred other slides I need to send him to redo for me. I need to keep him busy.
Fantastic. Maybe we can share John's details with you, Perry, and you can send those slides off.
I look forward to that.
Thank you very much. And as Dr. Andy's pointed out, don't forget that next week is the last week that the competition runs, and you've just heard that we've doubled the prize money. We're seeing the popularity, and so if you've got a background that you'd like to share with us, please share that with us for next week. And once again, if we can just thank our sponsors. Perry, would you like to run through the sponsors for today and thank them all, please?
Of course, we'd like to again thank LPU and again Lilibeth for joining us again today. Fantastic to have you joining us on this very important panel today. Our friends at UST, also in the Philippines, in Manila, to NCUT in Kaohsiung in Taiwan, to HELI, the Higher Education Leadership Institute, to our friends of the Association in Macau of Hospitality and Tourism Educators, and from me at Sunway University. So thank you. All of this has been our academic partners for 30-minute talks.
Thank you very much, Perry. And on that note, everybody, Andy, I know we've got a great lineup planned for next week. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you've got planned for next week?
Yeah, next week we have a very interesting presentation, and it's from Lee Seng Chen, who's the acting director of the Master's Graduate Program at National Kaohsiung University. But it's going to be about coffee and tea tourism, and this is one area that, yeah, I love my coffee, I love my tea, but I didn't know that there was so much research on it. And we have two participants. Someone has written a book on this topic, and Dr. Martin, who has actually two coffee businesses in the Philippines. So what a wonderful combination of the academic world and the real world and the research that's been done on the coffee and tea tourism. Next week's going to be a very exciting program. I know we'll have a lot of people attending that one because we all love our little coffee shops.
And the tea, don't forget the tea. I'm going to put the kettle on for next week.
We'll have the English tea organised for Perry, and we'll have the coffee organised for Andy and myself. So we can't wait for the show, Andy and Perry. And finally, don't forget, everybody, that if you're interested in one of our 30-minute talks, participation certificates, attendance certificates, don't forget to scan the QR code that's on the screen right now and complete today's survey. It's important that you complete the survey in order to qualify for the certification. And on that note, it's goodbye from me. And until next week, stay safe and look after yourself. And over to you, Perry.
And thank you very much, Alan, for running today's show. I hope everyone's learned a bit more about accreditation. And thanks very much. Stay safe. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Andy.
And again, thank you, everyone. This is the QR code for today's survey. We always we have great speakers today. We had from 2 different countries, 2 different universities, or both accredited universities. I think it's a great way for us to get together and share that information with everyone. We hope the students enjoyed it, and I'll look forward to seeing everyone next week.
And Lilibeth, would you like to say goodbye to our participants today?
Yes, I think it was a great session. Thank you very much for the invitation, Perry, Alan, and Dr. Andy, and also to Dr. Pearl. Thank you.
Thank you. And Pearl, final say from you.
Thank you for inviting me, and it's very interesting discussion. And I hope all the students, they would feel like they have learned something just like myself. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And on that note, everybody, 30-minute talks. Until next week. See you next week. Keep safe and look after yourself.